there's never a time when you can't restart your life. And I think that it really does apply to transitioning out of the military, because it's a completely different life out here. And being able to take whatever you've done in the past, whether good or bad, and sort of turn that into something better, I think that's something we should all aspire to, especially transitioning out of the military.
Absolutely.
My stepdad's one of my heroes. My mom was 15 when I was born, and my biological dad was not around a lot. My stepdad was 14 when he came into my life, and he's been in my life ever since.
Yeah.
There was a lot of growing up that happened for my parents. There's a lot of growing up that was happening for me, like alongside of them. I did football, I did baseball, I did diving, I did wrestling, and all of this was just Phillip trying to figure out, where do I fit in, and how can I find my niche in the world?
Yeah.
And I think after I joined the military, it was like, I want to just be part of a team. And I think that's why theater was so important to me as a kid. You get to be part of a team, and everyone is doing their job. And if a complete stranger can help me look at my house and help me set up my life, just imagine that person who wants to help
that's already
there. I think everybody has the capacity and probably has people they don't even know are in their corner rooting for them.
Right.
So find those people, lean on those people, and it'll all work out.
We got that on tape, right?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Holman, an Army veteran who served in the Medical Service Corps. These days, I work as a technical recruiter in the cleared space here at MetroStar. We know how important these conversations are to the military community, and we're honored to provide a platform for sharing insights, making connections, and building resources for transitioning service members. This is Civvies, a podcast by MetroStar.
Welcome to MetroStar's Civvies Podcast, where we are making it our mission to make your military transition just a little bit better by hearing the stories of others that have gone before you. And today in the studio is Phillip Killough, who I actually know. I recruited at AWS several years ago. And Phillip, I've always wanted to hear just a little bit more about your story. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
You bet. We're glad to have you. And I want to start just by asking, why Civvies? Why did you choose to come on and tell your story? Because not everyone agrees to come on, right?
Yeah, true. A little bit of selfishness here, but I'm a huge podcast guy. And so being reached out to do a podcast was like, oh, absolutely. No context whatsoever. I'll do a podcast. But once I looked into Civvies and found out, what it was about and what you guys are kind of trying to do here, I thought it was really important to come on and show my perspective, show my transition, and hopefully just give some insight into what it looks like to exit the military and to go into the civilian world. And, if I can help even one or two sailors or just military members in general to have a more smooth transition and a more successful transition, then I think that's worth value. So I'm happy to be here and sort of provide that if I can.
Yeah, we so appreciate you being here. One of the reasons too, I wanted to reach out to you is because you're somewhat newly transitioned. You've been out for a few years now, and that's kind of where I want to start. Just tell me about your journey into the military. Did you come from a military family? What led to your decision to join the military?
So I do not come from a military family. I think we only have one person in my family, my grandpa Jack Killough, who also served in the Navy. So I think that my decision was primarily driven just by my upbringing and going through high school. And my family didn't have a lot of money, so it didn't seem like paying for college was going to be in the cards. And I'd found out later, while I was in the Navy, actually, that I have ADHD. And that went undiagnosed my entire childhood.
Interesting.
So I would have a lot of trouble with focusing in class and some behavioral issues in class that the behavioral ones may or may not have been driven by that. But I just felt like school wasn't necessarily for me. And I didn't think that I would be successful, and I didn't have the confidence really to pursue that sort of thing. And a recruiter came to the school one day and they were like, hey, do you want to take the ASVAB? And I kind of bullied my buddy into taking it with me. And we went and took the ASVAB together. And I scored an 85 on it. And the recruiter was like, hey, you kind of have your pick at most of the jobs,
Opens the door, right.
whatever you'd like to do. So, and that was when I was 17. So it's kind of, off to the races from there. My mom signed the contract for me when I was 17.
That's
and
your underage, yeah.
went a little, like after I turned 18, then I left in July. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a matter of circumstance, but I did have a desire to serve the country. And I think that started to really develop as I got a little bit older.
So knowing you a little bit, I know you're in tech now, right? But when you joined at 17, you did well on the ASVAB. Did you get to pick your career field? Was it tech at that time, or walk me through that?
I had no clue at all what the jobs were, what anything meant. You know, the Navy likes to use a lot of different acronyms for things and whatnot. So my original contract was actually an STG, which is like a sonar tech.
Oh, okay.
And I was supposed to go into like the advanced version of that, where you sign like a 6-year contract and you get, you know, early promotion and whatnot. And I actually was about to leave, and they were like, "Oh, that contract's gone now, so you need to pick something else." And I was like, "Okay, like what's close to that? What's close to that?" And because I was like not coming from money, and because I wanted to make sure that I had like a consistent career, I was like, "Oh, I'll do 20 years." And when I went into MEPS, they were like, "Oh, you can't sign that." Like, you know,
what's the bonus for that exactly?
and so they were like, "Okay, you can be in IT, and then we'll give you the ATF component," which extended my contract to 6 years.
Okay.
So my original contract was 6, but once I was like IT, I was like, okay, IT, I know what that is. You know, like fixing computers or whatnot.
Sure.
I did have interest as a kid into tech, and my good childhood friend, Jack Dagoni, I've recently told him this, that I would have never had any like interest in tech at all. But I used to go over to his house, and his family had a Mac Color.
Ooh, that was fancy back then.
Exactly. Yeah. My family, we didn't have a computer, and then we ended up getting a very old Compaq, the big like grayish brown thing.
Yeah, it's really heavy too.
But after I saw that Mac, and him and his brother would like build little video games and do stuff like that, I was like, oh, hooked. You know, I wanted to go and like learn more about that stuff. So as soon as I found out that I could do a job like that in the military, and that they were going to pay me right away for it, I was like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's that reminds me of just like the power of one individual can kind of like shape or shift your life in so many different ways professionally. So prior to the military, I'm just curious to know, you said you didn't come from a military, family at all. I think you were raised by maybe a single mom.
Yeah. So, not a single mom. So I had a stepdad, and I mean, my stepdad's one of my heroes. So he stepped in. My mom was 15 when I was born, and my biological dad was not around a lot. He was in and out of incarceration and whatnot. So I really did like grow up with my parents. My stepdad was 14 when he came into my life, and he's been in my life ever since. Yeah. And you know, there was a lot of growing up that happened for my parents. There's a lot of growing up that was happening for me, like alongside of them. Like I was born in the late 90s, but like I grew up listening to like the early tracks of Eminem, and like that was, you know, like my taste of music was definitely skewed that way, because that's what my parents listened to. My stepdad actually just recently got out of prison.
Okay.
And he went away for manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 6 years. He took a plea deal. He didn't kill anybody, but he was sort of part of someone dying. Sure. And it's like it's a whole thing, but I can still say that he's one of my heroes, because, you know, he was young, and there's no excuse for any sort of crime like that. And that's why there's rehabilitation for people who have done crimes and whatnot. But he got out. So he was sentenced to 6 years. He only did 4. He got out for good behavior. And then he was sentenced to 3 years of probation. And he only did 12 months because he never missed a meeting with his parole officer. He never, you know, he's on the straight and narrow. And now his life is everything I would have hoped it could have been when I was a kid. And so I think that like tumultuous upbringing where things weren't always stable. And I grew up with 3 other siblings, and I have a bunch of other siblings from my biological father. Oh, gotcha. He has other kids as well.
And with the 3, where are you in the lineup? I'm just curious. Are you
I'm the oldest of all of them.
Oh, okay.
So I was the very first one.
Okay.
And then my sister, the next youngest one that I grew up with, She's 23.
Okay.
And then my brother is 20.
It's pretty young.
And
still.
then my sister is 18. So there's an 11-year gap between the two of us.
I appreciate you sharing something that I perceive to be like just kind of deeply personal, especially because I think with someone like you, you've had a good career in the military. You transitioned out pretty seamlessly, got into big tech. I think sometimes when we meet people, we make up these stories in our head, right? Thinking that Phillip came from this traditional, household. I mean, maybe your parents were military, they were in tech. And then the reality is very different from that, right? And so I always think that just like the human storytelling and where someone came from is really powerful, because it reminds me that no matter where you start, it doesn't mean that you're going to end the same way.
Right. And I think that's part of why I look up to my dad with what he's done. I'm very proud of him for what he's done, because just because you start in one place, you're going to hit hurdles and things are going to happen. And you're going to make very bad decisions. And in his case, really bad decisions.
Right.
But there's never a time when you can't restart your life. And I think that it really does apply to transitioning out of the military, because it's a completely different life out here.
Right.
And being able to take whatever you've done in the past, whether good or bad, and sort of turn that into something better. I think that's something we should all aspire to, especially transitioning out of the military.
Absolutely. So what was your official job title, or is it called MOS in the Navy?
So in the Navy, it's called a rate.
Okay.
And I was a information systems technician first class when I got out of the Navy. The only caveat to that is that I was never paid as an E6. So I got out as an E5, but I was frocked to information systems technician first class.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, thinking that you were going to do 20 years of service. So tell me just a little bit more about that. Cause I think you actually did either, over 7, close to 8 years in the military, which, I just having been in the military, being married to the military, you're almost at 10. I can hear people saying, no, don't leave. So yeah, what changed?
So I have a very specific moment that I remember from boot camp, and they sit us all in this room. And I hope some of you Navy folk out there can remember this, but they sit us all in this big room at these desks, and they have a slideshow. And the first slide that comes up, it says, "You are in the Navy, you will go to sea." and all of us are like, "Oh no, you're right. I will go to sea." And so I went to San Diego as my first duty station. And I was living there with my now wife, then fiance at the time. She was going to San Diego State.
And she's amazing, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Julia.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do not deserve her, but we were living in San Diego, and we were there for 3 years, but we like to say that she lived there for 3 years and I visited occasionally.
Right. Cause you'd go out.
Cause I was always out to sea. So I did a pretty long deployment while we were there, and we did a whole lot of underways. So after that, I was like, I don't really know if I want to continue to do this. I like to be at home. I like to be with my family.
Okay. I'm so curious, and I have to ask this for our viewers, because there are individuals like myself that get violently seasick. Did you get seasick in the Navy? So
the first couple underways that I did were pretty short, and we didn't go into any sort of choppy seas or anything like that. But the one time that I got violently seasick was on my first deployment when we first got underway. And I think some of that might have been nerves, but I was dog sick for probably 2 days.
So bad.
But once you're out there for a while, you get your sea legs and you start to, a lot of Dramamine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it happens for sure.
Okay.
The P-ways can be pretty messy for the first couple days underway. So
thanks for filling us in.
What all Navy people will say is just, you deserve your shore duty. Take your shore duty, right?
Right.
So my wife has always been a traveler. And she was like, well, let's try and get overseas. Let's see if we can get overseas duty station. So I was like, okay, I can do overseas. We'll do, this next shore tour, and then I'll get out after that. So we picked a bunch of places, and we had Spain and Germany and Italy and Japan, and then not necessarily overseas, but Hawaii in the sea.
Sure.
So we had picked all these places, and the first time, none of it. Didn't get anything, got passed up for my first look.
Yeah.
And then the second time we were like, okay, we're just going to stack the deck, all Italy. Whole list is Italy. So we put it all on there. And I got the email from my recruiter like right off the bat that we were going to Italy.
Yeah. And how long were you in Italy for?
So we were in Italy for I think just under 4 years.
And was that your first time visiting Italy?
It was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Big culture shift, big curveball. And we were also in Italy during COVID, which was a crazy time.
Yeah. I didn't realize we had a friend that was there. So we've heard some stories. I would like to unpack that a little bit,
Okay,
but
yeah.
I want to talk about the car. You have an Italian little car that you brought back to the United States. And we're going to get a picture of this to show the viewers because I just think it's super cool and random. Tell us about the Italian ride that you have.
My wife and I, during COVID, we were like very bored as everyone else was. And we actually didn't bring back any souvenirs from Italy. This was going to be our big souvenir. So towards the end of COVID, we went on Facebook Marketplace and we found a 1970 Fiat 500 for €2,500.
It's the cutest thing ever.
Yeah. And it ran fine. It ran great actually. And it was just in rough shape. So our COVID project was to rebuild this Fiat.
Right.
So we like sourced all the parts. I mean, in Italy, it's pretty easy because it's all there, but we sourced all the parts and we've got it to like factory new. And it's just it's a wonderful time. It makes like 12 horsepower, does 0 to 60 eventually, but
I love it. And you take it to car shows, I think.
Yeah. It won the Old Town Fairfax car show for best European.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah,
I love it.
Sweet. The trophy was taller than the car.
It's really funny. So, okay. I know you were in Italy. COVID happened. Did you get out of service during COVID or after?
This was just post-COVID that I got out. So Italy was starting to sort of open up again. We did like a flurry of travel and tried to make it to as many countries as we could before we left. But it was pretty open. The world was pretty much back open when we moved back. So definitely towards the end of COVID. And that wasn't really any part of the decision to get out.
Okay.
But it was just, another thing that happened, another sea story to tell. So
Yeah. So talk to me about your transition from service and just your preparation. We always ask that on this podcast and we hear various answers. Some have prepared years in advance for their transition. Others that had an unexpected transition, maybe only had a couple of months before they What did your transition or your lead up to transition rather look like?
So I think it's important to mention that my wife and I are always a team, and we wanted to make sure that wherever we were going, it was good for both of us, but also we like to put a little spice in and leave things up to chance sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So
I'm feeling anxious. Yeah.
So probably 3 or 4 months out from getting out, we both said, okay, we're going to just blast out our resumes to wherever we find interesting, different countries, different states, wherever, and whoever gets a job first, that's where we're moving.
Okay.
Which is kind of how we were leaving it up to fate. So during that 3-month period, probably like 90 days out, that's when I started to go through like the TAPS program and started to do my transition and start ramping up my resume. And my wife was going through putting feelers out, trying to find out where we were going to go. And she actually got offered a job. So she was the manager of the USO in Naples. And she got offered the job to transfer as, I think it's one of the director positions in Hawaii.
Good. Ooh, that's
right. So we were like, okay, perfect.
Right. Sold.
We had friends that were still living there. We've had amazing trips to Hawaii. All of that would have really worked out. But because the amount they were paying in Italy is not, it's much cheaper to live in Italy.
Okay.
So how they would do the transition is there would only be like a certain percentage pay bump. And we didn't want to take the risk that I didn't find a job that could make up for that, because Hawaii is very expensive.
Very, yeah.
So we wanted to make sure we could still be comfortable and that we were making a smart transition out of our military lives into civilian life.
So you're really looking at like the cost of living differences. Right. Before we get to the next part of the story, which is super important, obviously, as you started transitioning, it sounds like your command knew, right?
Yeah.
Were you having any conversations with like supervisors, mentors, about transitioning what kind of feedback were you getting from the people immediately around you as to like whether they thought it was a good idea to get out of the military or not?
There was a lot of pushback.
Okay.
At first. So I was very fortunate in that I started working on the watch floor, and I worked on the watch floor for about 2 years, 2 or so. And then the Commodore had basically an assistant position open up, and they were going to take someone from the watch floor to do that position. And my chief had vouched for me, and I went and did an interview with the Commodore, and I ended up becoming his aide, which was just a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Much better working hours.
They're very selective about that. So that speaks pretty highly of you.
Thank you. Yeah. I think there was a stroke of luck in there. But I'm super grateful that I had that opportunity. And so working in that position, I had a lot of interface with like upper brass and higher enlisted, and people like that. So there was a lot of mentors that I would go to and talk to about the transition. And I think that they saw, that I was just a good sailor and that I was a value to the Navy as a whole. And the pushback that I got was like, well, you just made first class, and you stay in a couple more years. I think that you're going to make chief.
Right.
And I think you'll have a good long career in the Navy, and like, this is good for you. And there's some not so great things like, you don't get free healthcare in the civilian world. They're not going to give you BAH in the civilian world. So there's some realities there. Yeah, there's some realities that you have to come to terms with. And a lot of that pushback was, I think, because I was starting that transition and they didn't really know, it's a mixed bag. You'll have people who get out that have the same job that I did that abandon tech entirely.
Okay.
And then you'll have people that do what I did and they'll go straight into tech, or they'll go to a contracting role or something like that. So I don't think that they meant anything negative by trying to push back on that, on me getting out. But I think once I really started to interview with these big companies and had some doors open, some of that pushback went away, and it was more supportive and like, we'll just make sure you have this lined up, make sure you have that lined up.
I'm curious to know how you filter through getting so many opinions, right? Good and bad around you, and kind of just sort through that individually to figure out like what is right for Phillip. I think part of this that I'm interested in as well is it sounds like you had people around you who are higher ranking, they're older, they have just frankly more life experience, right? Yeah. Which I think is pretty natural for us to weigh a bit more. So just how did you just filter through those various opinions to really sort out what you wanted to do next? I
think, and this will sound corny, but you really just got to believe in yourself. And I was fortunate enough to have a wife who believed in me from the second I said I was going to get out and would have supported me if I wanted to stay in.
Right.
But once you decide that that's something you really want, everything that you do should be in service of accomplishing that goal. So even when it seems hard, it's important that you rely on the people who have your best interest in mind. And you can take some of that advice and take it back to your cohort or your family or whoever you put your trust in, and kind of like parse through that information to see if, maybe there's some truth to the things I'm being told, and maybe some of it's just, opinions or whatever. So I think it's important to really like lean on the people you trust for that. Take everything with a grain of salt, but also like just believe in yourself. Like if you think getting out is the right thing for you to do, and you feel that you're well equipped to do so, no one's going to advocate more for yourself than yourself. So. Yeah, absolutely. So when you transitioned and you start looking at these jobs that you're interested in, how do you even figure out what titles to look up? So I was very fortunate, and I found a really great recruiter on LinkedIn. You might know her. I don't know if I do. So I reached out to you, and before I had actually started to get interviews at other companies, you took my resume and you said, hey, like this, I think this would fit for you. And then I was like, okay, cool. That's the title that I'm going for. Okay. And so I went on, I think it's called USA Jobs, and like hire vets and sites like that. And I would just type in, like cloud engineer or support engineer or whatever, like tech engineering position that I could think of to put into those. And I would just sort through and like see what lined up. And And I mean, now I would tell someone who's getting out, like, throw that into ChatGPT.
Yep.
And, tell it, hey, give me a bunch of jobs that fit this description. And then go through and filter through and see what you actually qualify for.
Yep.
Because I mean, the internet is so big.
Right.
And really, like, narrowing that stuff down can be hard. But finding someone who has found value in you is huge. And recruiters are a great space for that.
Absolutely.
And then using the tech we have now to whittle down the millions of jobs that are out there that would fit your qualifications is super, super important.
I like that you touched on something that hits a chord with me personally as a recruiter, is that you did your due diligence, right? I kind of steered you a little bit, and then you took that title, you started looking up stuff, right, to get more information. That's such a huge piece for anyone transitioning. Don't just blindly ask someone, right? And put 100% stock in whatever answer they give you. You have to do your work as well.
Yeah.
So I like that you mentioned that, but then use ChatGPT, take it to the next,
take it to the next level. The tools.
Yeah. Did you ever think about like what you were looking for in a recruiter? Because it's a big move getting out of the military. You're engaging with different recruiters, asking questions. Did you ever really just kind of think about, like, if I'm working with someone, I want them to be approachable, informative? Was that even a thought in your mind at the time?
I think that something that drew me to you was that you were not selling me on a specific job. You were selling me on what I could qualify for.
Sure.
And what you thought was the best fit for me. So I think that finding someone that is willing to put in the extra effort to find something that fits you rather than trying to shove you into a job that either you're not qualified for or you're overqualified for. I think that's the most important thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Because a good fit is what's going to give you job satisfaction. So
yeah, definitely. We got that on tape, right? So Phillip, we know you were a theater kid. Tell us a little bit about that and how it relates to showing up for an interview.
I think it's like finding my place. Because I wasn't just a theater kid. I was the quarterback on the football team. Like I did I wrestled, I dove, I did a lot of stuff, played baseball.
These are the moments I feel worse about my life. Because I'm like, I did nothing.
Well, I was a jack of all trades, and I wanted to find out where I fit in life.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when I was in theater, that was huge because I could go and I could be on stage and I could be anybody.
Yeah.
I did the Traveling Wizard of Oz when they came to town.
Yeah.
Obviously you can tell by my stature that I was a munchkin, and a Winky. So I got to play that role. And I dressed up like on Mean Girls when they do the talent show and they do the Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that. That was a ton of fun. I did Aladdin. I played Aladdin in like my elementary school play, and I had done theater my whole life. And I think that part of that was because I could be someone else, and I could try on all these hats and I could find out who I was as a person.
Right.
And then I went into high school, and I went to a performing arts high school for my first 3 years. And then I transferred from that high school to a different high school so I could just finish my education. But I did all the shows there. We did musical theater. We did the Drowsy Chaperone. I did the Seussical the Musical Junior.
Cool.
With Yes Company and Modesto. So I did all of these theater things. And I think that, like I said, part of that was just finding out who I was.
Yeah.
I did football, I did baseball, I did diving, I did wrestling, and all of this was just Phillip trying to figure out where do I fit in and how can I find my like niche in the world.
Yeah.
And I think after I joined the military, it was like, oh, I want to just be part of a team. And I think that's why theater was so important to me as a kid. You get to be part of a team and everyone is doing their job. Whether it's the tech crew, whether it's the actors on stage or the makeup, in the backstage, or costumers or any of those people, doing that stuff was fun because I was around other people and I had a chance to deliver a common goal. And that was like having a great show on Saturday night, like having people that appreciated what you were doing. And in the military, it's the same thing. You're all working for a common goal and you accomplish that mission and it's exciting. And then when you get into the civilian world, you look for that same thing. You find a team that values you and a team that'll clap for you on, not on Saturday night, hopefully maybe on like Friday afternoon, like, hey, you did a great job. And I think that's important.
I like that you mentioned testing out different characters. And I think that might be a useful tip. Actually, I've never thought about it that way for job seekers, someone that's transitioning. Don't box yourself in.
Right. Yeah. Try to be, I mean, they don't know you.
Yeah.
If you want to reinvent who you are and putting yourself forward, like who you feel like you are is who you're putting forward, then I think that's more valuable, because then when you get to that place, you can be your genuine self.
Right. But act the part.
Yeah.
Right?
But act
if
the
you
part.
Want to, if you want to be more confident,
just
start practicing.
Act confident. Yeah.
Right.
Because I was a small kid, growing up. I'm still a small kid, but I was a small kid growing up, and like going on stage, there's a lot of typecasting.
Right.
Like 5'1" Phillip is not going to be the leading star in Hercules, unfortunately.
Probably not. Sorry,
but
not happening.
You can still find where you fit in there, and having the confidence to even go up there and do it is what it's going to take. And when you transition out, having the confidence to go and talk to that recruiter on LinkedIn, or to sit in an Amazon interview and do 5 hours of interviews in one shot, or go in front of a panel of people and speak to, 6 different interviewers at one time. It's going to take a lot. And sometimes it's scary. Most times it's scary.
Right.
But put on that hat, put on that face, and just pretend like you have the confidence. And if you pretend for long enough, eventually you just have the confidence.
Right.
And you can turn that into something great. So,
yeah. Cause you're not just thinking about it anymore, but you're actually going in, you're practicing, you're showing up to the interview and going through those motions, which is ultimately, I think, going to make you stronger.
Now that I think about it, I think theater might have really helped me out a lot with this, because, what is an interview other than a show of what you are?
It's an audition.
It's an audition for this position. And, I went and did Linux, and that's how I studied my lines. And I wrote down all of my LPs, and I studied and memorized that.
Right.
And when I went on, the lights are on, and put on the show. And the better show you put on, the more likely you are to get the part.
Yeah.
And that's how I landed there, I think.
And the audience, the interviewers, are going to give you the feedback.
Right. Yeah.
Of how you did.
Yeah. And I think that in theater, you can't see the audience for the most part. It's a dark theater. And when you're interviewing, sometimes are you really seeing the interviewer? Or are you so zoned in on the situation that you're not really,
Yeah.
So you kind of are let me just rehearse this until I can do it in my sleep. And then you can add that little spice in, and you can kind of play off of how they're reacting and whatnot. You might not have an interviewer that's very expressive.
Right.
But if you exude this sort of confidence, then I think that it plays well.
Right.
And I think that you can really gain a lot off of just treating it like you're going on stage. This is your audition. And when it's all over, it's all over.
Yeah, absolutely. It just is a good, to me, I feel like I'm in a better mental place even thinking about, because interviews are still hard for even a recruiter going through their own interview, despite being, sitting through interviews and everything. It's a very different experience when you individually are going through it. And I've never thought about it that way. Like, you're auditioning for a role.
Yeah. I mean, you are, right?
Absolutely.
Just because we call it an interview.
I do have a go back. Was there a moment in your transition where you questioned your decision to leave the military at all?
Not for a second.
Not for a second.
No,
okay.
I was ready to get out. I was ready to start the next chapter of my life. I think that I will never regret my military experience. I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of hard times. But I am the person who I am today because of the military and because of all the growth that I experienced through there, whether it was the people that I interacted with, or the jobs that I got to do, or the sites that I saw. But when I knew it was time to get out, it was time to get out. And I knew that if I didn't put my full heart into doing that, and like I said earlier, if I'm not deciding to really commit and believe that I can do it, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
So once I made that decision, that was it. I was going to do it.
And like you said earlier, if you don't believe in you,
right,
no one else is.
Exactly.
Right. You got to start there. Tell me what you do at AWS. I obviously know, but our audience doesn't. But tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I'm a Amazon dedicated cloud engineer. And I work on the config team for Amazon, and I do a lot of ops work. I do some like building and engineering.
And I know we got to keep it kind of high level, very general.
Right.
If you don't mind sharing, just and this isn't necessarily specific to AWS, but just you went on a few interviews. How did you prep for those interviews? That's a really good question. So if you have a good recruiter, they're going to tell you where to find the information that you need. And they're going to tell you what to prepare for. So when I interviewed at Amazon, there's a ton of good content online about how that process goes and what you should expect. But I went into the job postings that I had applied for, and like one of the things that it said was you should be proficient in Linux. And so I was like, okay, like I do Linux in the Navy, but I had been working as the aide to the Commodore, so I hadn't been doing that stuff for a while. Right.
So I would go into my office at my house and I would spin up a Linux instance, and I would just do every command that I had ever learned, and I would do it over and over and over. And then as soon as I got to the end, I would tear the whole thing down, restart, and do it again. And so I would do that over and over. And that's kind of how I started to build my tech bar. And then as far as the like, I don't know if you want to say like personality portion, the leadership principles that Amazon does.
Behavioral aspects. Yeah.
Right. I would go through and I would research all of the leadership principles, and I would be like, okay, like I should have 3 stories for each of these.
Right.
And I would write them down and I would memorize them and I would redraft them and revise them with my wife. And that's really like what I did for Amazon. And interestingly, I replicated that with 2 other interviews that I had. And you're not going to have the same interview or process at every company. And so the other companies that I interviewed with, they just didn't have the same well-oiled machine that was going on at Amazon, especially with like the interview process and the candidate experience. And honestly, once I did one of those first interviews with the other tech companies, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I even want to work here. Like even if I got this job, because once I went through the Amazon process, it was such a rewarding process to see my prep work come to fruition and be useful, that I was like, okay, I think this is where I want to be, because, you know, it made my work worth it.
What I appreciate about what you said is that there's a level of like self-awareness that you had, because as a job applicant, you're interviewing the company as well. Right. And I think that there's a good number of service members, they get out, they're not 100% sure what to do. They go on a bunch of interviews and they just take something because you need something. That's the reality of life. You have to survive.
Yeah.
And then a year out, they're like, oh, I really hate this. And they maybe missed, not necessarily some flags, but just some things that aren't, you know, conducive to what they were looking for originally.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not a good fit, or if it's not a good fit for you, then you're not going to like being at work. And, you know, we don't want to, live to work. We want to work to live, but at the same time, like you should probably enjoy where you're spending 8 hours of your day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talk to me about certifications. That's always a hot question that I get, especially as a recruiter, from the tech community, those who are just starting out or maybe junior, mid-level. They want to know, what certifications should I do? Are there any that you recommend?
So I had Security Plus and A Plus when I got out of the Navy, which the Navy paid for. And actually, as part of the ATF pipeline, they make you get those certifications before you graduate. So I had those. I had an associate's degree in math, and I had an associate's degree in cybersecurity. That was pretty much it. I mean, I think that it's really dependent on the company that you're applying for.
Yep.
A lot of companies want to see, you know, higher level education or a ton of certs. But there are some companies out there that really value the experience over the certification. And I think that landing in Amazon, that was sort of one of those places. But I will say that even though I don't think that got me through the door, I continued my education. I got a bachelor's in cybersecurity.
Very cool. Congrats.
Thank you. And I think like I just recently got promoted last October. And I think a lot of the skills and information that I picked up during those classes helped me to be more productive and provide higher level work. And that's what helped me get promoted. So I think the certs and the degrees can help you definitely get in the door and get that interview.
Right.
But after the interview, it's really up to you how you progress through your career.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've leaned into that and taken more opportunities that have come your way.
Trying to.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, and this is kind of a broader question here, but how did your military experience prepare you for big tech, if at all?
So I think it's interesting that a lot of the big tech companies run off of this like L pay grade situation. Mm-hmm. So when I got out, I was an E5 and now I'm an L5, which is interesting. And then I have a title that's like separate from my L level. And there's a lot of other companies, like I think Netflix also does that. They have like the L levels for their different stuff. So it was nice to be able to kind of settle into something that I was already familiar with.
Sure.
And you kind of know how the structure of promotion and the like climbing the ladder goes.
Oh, got it. Okay. So it's kind of all laid out, right?
Yeah. You know exactly what you need to do. You know what lines you need to hit to promote. And the military is pretty similar. At least the Navy is pretty similar to that. I did have a little bit of an issue when I got out with always wearing like overdressing for work.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I need to have my shirt tucked in. I need to have a nice collar on.
Showed up in a 3-piece suit. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that was a little bit of a change because I got to work and all my coworkers were wearing like, graphic tees and like hoodies and stuff. Yes. And I was like, this is very different to me.
Very casual. Yeah.
But I also think that when you get out and you step into these roles, the civilian world is very different. And the things that the military personnel are willing to go through or willing to deal with, you'll find are exponentially higher than what some civilians are willing to go with. And that's no disparaging comment on civilians. They just haven't went through the same experiences as us.
Sure.
So, being woken up at 1 a.m. to go and stand a watch because somebody didn't show up, like that's not going to happen in the civilian world. So you don't have to deal with that stuff out there. But when you have those experiences from the military and you bring them into the civilian world and your manager asks you, on your third or fourth week to do this hard project, a lot of times military guys are like, all right, like I'm going to get it done one way or another, because for us, there's really no other option when you're active duty. But I mean, use that to your advantage. Don't lose that mindset, because if you're the guy who is willing to do those hard projects, it's going to pay off.
Right.
They like when people work hard. They like when people are committed to finishing a project. And I think that's a huge part of why I've found success.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it ultimately just levels you up professionally. So you take that first assignment, you obviously are going to learn something even through failure. And then you're moving on to the next thing and you build.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to move on to just points of reflection. What's one thing that you would tell every service member who's within a year of transitioning out of service?
I would say get all your medical done. It's like number one.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good start.
Do all your medical, do all your dental. Depending on where you're at, like really hammer down where you want to live. That can be super important. Just like situationally for me, and you know this because you went and saw my house before I bought it. But I bought my house from Italy, from a parking lot, having never seen it before. And I had to lean on you to go and make sure it wasn't like in a sketchy neighborhood or, there wasn't burning cars on the street or something like that.
Right.
But I think like thinking about the big picture stuff, having a good 5-10 year plan, and really thinking about like, where do you want to land? Because military people, we move all the time.
Right.
And so if you don't like a place, it's okay. You probably won't be there in 3 years.
Yep.
And that can be a hard habit to break. So finding a place that you think you can be comfortable in for the foreseeable future, potentially long-term, maybe till retirement, that's really important. So think about where you want to live, and think about what is going to make you feel fulfilled, as far as like jobs and activities that you can do outside of work. Because putting yourself in a good headspace is going to be really important for your transition.
Absolutely.
Like you want to be happy where you're at. So you want to plan all of that stuff, even up to a year out. Where am I going to be? What am I going to do? And start talking to people about, people who have recently gotten out. like, what did you do? What went well? What was terrible?
Right.
How can I make that transition easier? Reach out to people that reach out to people that you don't know, and try to get the whole story and figure out like what's going to work best for you.
Gosh, you touched on so many good points there. I like, obviously, that you said, reach out to those that have also transitioned and those that have newly transitioned too, because they're going through it.
Yeah.
They're going through the thick of it. And then just asking for help with, you being in Italy in a parking lot, and I went, viewed your house for you. I'm also a military spouse. Like, I get it. I've also, purchased a home unseen, and that can be a pretty scary situation.
Yeah.
Even if you have a realtor, you want to, get eyes on it with someone that, What's one thing you'd wished you'd known before you started applying for civilian jobs?
So I think I have a good answer for that. And I'm going to say I cheated a little bit, but
Define cheated.
So my Commodore, he referred me to someone who their job is to look at contracts for people getting hired.
Smart.
And so I think the thing that really got me was like, I don't know how much money to ask for.
Yep.
And we have a lot of benefits in the military, but when you look at base pay, it's nothing, like comparatively to what you're going to get in the civilian world, especially if you're going into tech. And so when you go to a recruiter or you go to like a job and you get the interview and they say like, how much do you want to make? And you're like, oh, well, I don't know, like 60K,
right?
And they're like, and don't undersell yourself. So I think what I wish I would have known is exactly how valuable my skills are and how they translate to the civilian world. And I was super fortunate, and I had someone that I could go to and be like, hey, I got this job offer. Should I take this? And and I showed her, and she was like, yeah, if you don't take this, you're going to be in trouble with me. And I was like, okay, yeah,
take it. I will. I will take it. Yeah. I don't remember what the offer was. I just remember it was good. Asking for assistance, I think, is always a good start. When it comes to compensation, obviously you have to know your numbers, right? You have to do your market research, but then know like what you need to live on, right? You have the reality of the market, but then like, what is the finances, your family, your life? What does that look like?
Exactly.
So it sounds like you definitely did that. I want to move on to some fun questions before you leave. And we'll start with an easy one. What's your go-to way to decompress after a long day in tech? I obviously can imagine some of the stuff that you're doing in big tech, but how do you decompress?
So usually I get back to the house, and I usually get home before my wife does. So I'll sit on the couch with our dog and hang out for a little bit. Then my wife gets home and we go for a very long walk around the neighborhood with my dog. And then we'll go to the store and do our grocery shopping and whatnot. But I think like my big way of decompressing is to just do a routine. And I think that may be some carryover from the military. It's very structured, very routine based. And I think having a consistent routine for me is huge. So like my way of doing that is just spending time with my family and like doing stuff together and separating my work life from my home life, which being in the civilian world makes it very easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that a lot from the veterans that have come on about just how important it is to get outside, just get outside, disconnect from all your devices, and just take a walk, do something physical.
Yeah. Be outside.
Well. Yeah.
Touch the ground.
What's your favorite tech gadget, app, or tool that you can't live without?
I think probably my car.
Okay. What kind of car do you drive?
So I drive a Tesla.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to get into a Rivian R1T because I want to swap over to the truck. When you work at a tech company, this is not a guarantee, but you have a high chance of having free charging.
Nice.
And so I really like all of the tech that comes along with having an EV, the 360 cameras and everything. My wife was in a minor car accident a while back, and the car like videotaped everything, and our insurance was like, yep, not your fault. Like,
so it captured it.
Oh yeah, right away.
Very cool.
So I like that, and I like all the integration with everything. Like I think all of that is fun, but not paying for gas or any fuel for my car is pretty sweet. So
Yeah.
I think like if I had to live without that, I'd be pretty bummed.
Okay. So if you have to live without it, you're going to a Rivian. We know that. We've established that.
We're going to, Well, I want the truck. I like the truck. So.
Yeah, it's cool. What's your favorite non-tech way to stay sharp? So like books, hobbies. Me
and my wife really like doing like outdoor activities. So we'll go paddle boarding and we go skiing in the winter time and do stuff like that. And then I've kind of been forgetting to do so, but I like to read a lot too. And we'll usually read. Usually that's like a winter thing because we want to be outside in the summer when it's light outside. But in the winter when it gets dark early, we'll usually go up and, read a nice book and stuff and try to do stuff like that.
Keep
play
your
some
mind
Scrabble.
Active. Yeah, very cool. And then last question for you. If you could build or invent any tech solution for veterans transitioning out of service, what would it be? So I think that if I could somehow integrate a generative AI to take military skills and convert them into exactly what companies are looking for, to translate that over so that we could build better and stronger resumes, and improve how that's being implemented, like through TAPS, in order to make sure that you have a fully polished resume that will get you hired and will get you through the door. I think there's a lot of ambiguity with how our resumes and how our skills in the military sort of translate over. Absolutely. And I think if we could have some sort of tool where you can drop it in there and it'll give you exactly what that means to a civilian hire or a civilian company, I think that would be very beneficial for anyone transitioning to be able to drop that in there, see what they're doing in the military, what it means to do that in the civilian world. I think that would absolutely. I think important. One of the things you touched on is something I still think there's such a need for, is that there's services like that or different apps that exist now, but they're not 100% accurate. Like you really have to QC anything, but you really have to QC the end product that you're getting, so you can speak to your resume and speak to your skill set. Exactly. So, very cool. Well, let us know when you start building that. How closely now do you stay to the military community? Are you like pretty strongly affiliated still? Do you go to like veterans groups? Are you part of organizations, or is it something? Sometimes when we have folks on, some are very closely connected still. They need that, and then others have just completely moved on, and they've kind of boxed it and put it up in the shelf. And so I have boxed it. It's in my shelf downstairs. Okay. But I will say that the friends that I've met in my time in the military are still very close to me. Specifically, our friends that live back in California. My wife went to school with our friend, Cassandra, and we ended up in the same boot camp division. And they're not the same age. They were in different grades, and we showed up to MEPS on the same day. We're not from anywhere near each other in California. Right. We showed up to MEPS on the same day. We got processed into the same division, and then met each other separate from my wife. So we didn't even know that there was any connection there. And one day we were writing letters, and I guess Cassandra wrote a letter to my wife and was like, "Hey, I think your boyfriend is in boot camp with me." And so it was like, "Oh, yeah, that's him." And so we became friends. And then I went on deployment a couple years after this, and we hadn't really like kept in great touch, but we had still talked to each other. And then we ended our deployment at RIMPAC in Hawaii, and she was just transitioning out of the military, and her husband was actually about to go into the military, but they were living in Hawaii. Oh, okay. And so my wife called them and was like, "Hey, are you guys in Hawaii? Like, I'd love to meet up." And they're like, "Oh, just stay at our house, like we'll hang out." Shoot. And so I finished my deployment in Hawaii. My wife was there, and then we met up with our friends, Cass and Brendan, and we've been super close ever since. So I think people like that is what I hold on to the most from my military experience. And like, I'm still patriotic, I like to go to 4th of July parade, and I like to do all the fun patriotic stuff. And on Memorial Day, we go over to Arlington National and pay our respects and stuff. So, but in a lot of ways, it sounds like you've created a new identity for yourself. Right. Yeah.
There's definitely civilian Phillip, and then there was IT1 Killough. So they're different people, and we share the same likes and dislikes. But I think that once I got out, it was important that I found out who I was outside of the military, because I joined. We signed the contract when I was still 17.
So young, yeah.
And that was my first real job career,
right?
And so that's all I had done. That's all I had known. And then after it was okay, who do you get to be now?
Right.
But that's a blessing. That's what you get. I mean, how many people get to really do that and have a hard transition between who you were from, your early years until your young adulthood. And then you get to pick something totally new after. That's super exciting.
Yeah. So it sounds like your mentality was I get to do blank next.
Yeah.
Right. Versus it being a super negative, what am I going to do now? Which is a valid emotion, I think, that a lot of service members have, because that's scary, especially for someone that went in at 17. That's your first and only just professional experience as an adult, and a young adult at that.
Yeah, I had to wait for. So we'll go into this a little deeper. So we signed the contract, then I had to do school, and then I turned 18, and then they were like, okay, you're going to ship out as soon as school is over. And I was like, okay, how about I ship out at the end of July? And they're like, oh, why do you want to ship out at the end of July? And I was like, I want to be with my family. I was hanging out with my now wife the whole time. So that's why, that's why I waited until the end of July.
Yeah. Future family.
Right. Yeah. So, that's sort of how that situation went.
I love it. Yeah. What do you say to someone that's watching right now, that's in the military, thinking about transitioning now, and they are just terrified of what that looks like for them?
I would say you have to decide if that's what you want. It's going to be scary no matter what. Any sort of change in your life can be terrifying. And there's no metric for that. It can be the smallest thing. It can be the biggest thing. But if that's what you truly want, and you stay consistent, and everything you do is in service of your dream to get out and, to have a job or stay in. If everything you're doing is in service of that, then you have nothing to worry about.
So go all in.
Go all in.
Yeah.
Send it.
And final question for you. Julia sounds amazing. I feel like I need a Julia in my life to just organize and support me and cheer me on. But what do you say to someone that doesn't have a Julia?
First of all, I'm sorry that you don't have a Julia, because she's incredible. And honestly, I couldn't have done anything. She's been there since the start, because we were together before I enlisted.
Yeah.
She's been there since the start. And if you don't have a Julia, I'm sorry that you don't. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people in your life that deeply care about you and want to see you succeed. And finding those people and leaning on them and asking for help is critical. Not everybody can have a Julia, and I'm very fortunate to have one. But I think everybody has the capacity and probably has people they don't even know are in their corner rooting for them. Right. So find those people, lean on those people, and it'll all work out.
And it sounds like more specifically, be transparent with those people.
Be open and honest and have real conversations, and don't be afraid to be emotional. It's a hard time. This is a new life for you. Right. And having that honesty and developing your emotional range for that is going to be important. Especially getting out, because in the military, there's a certain way that people are okay with talking to each other. There's a certain way that we conduct business. It's very operational. It's very straight to the point. And learning how to not do that is important. Right. And using tact and talking to people in a way that, they want to be talked to. But that's something else. You can find those people that care about you to really learn those skills as you transition out. Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. Find people care about you. They do. And even if you don't think so and you can't find them, you just got to look a little bit harder, because I'm sure they're there. Yeah. And don't necessarily assume that you're a burden. It's also. Oh, definitely not. What I hear. No, I mean, people want to help. It's gratifying. And I think I don't want to speak for you, but when I watched you help me and others as a recruiter, and this is just business, I can tell that it gives you satisfaction to be able to help someone. Yeah. And if a complete stranger can help me look at my house and help me set up my life. Just imagine that person who wants to help
that's already in your life.
There,
yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we just had that common ground of coming from military community and
me
moving
together
multiple times. Yeah. I'm like, I
have
got
each other's
this.
Backs.
Give me the address. I'll go. Well, thank you so much for being here, Phillip. It was wonderful for us to just hear more about your story. If you'd like, and you're open to others connecting with you, where can people find you?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I have a LinkedIn.
And we'll link that at the bottom of this.
And you can reach out to me on Instagram, or that's pretty much it. LinkedIn and Instagram.
But just a disclaimer with his Instagram. Those pictures. Oh. You guys, you travel, you take such beautiful pictures. I'm like living an alternate life through you and Julia.
Well, that's the other reason why everyone needs a Julia, because she is an incredible photographer, and she, full disclosure, curates my entire Instagram. So
yeah, well, it looks fantastic. And she also took our Christmas photos, our family Christmas photos 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was a good time.
It's just like, wow, time is... It's flying, but I still have those photos up. They are still my favorite. So maybe I'll have to fly back and bring everybody back and hit the studio again.
Our yearly photo meetup.
Yeah. Thanks so much again for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.